All right. Well, I am from Story, but today I'm not here to talk about Story. I will tell a story. I will tell a story. Yes, yes. I will tell a story, but not about Story. Um, Conference talks are always about talking about one's project, and I wanted to change that. So I want to maybe just spend some time to think about how the internet will change and should change based on the fact that we're slowly getting a new type of user. We're getting AI agents starting to use the internet and use the browser. So let's take a step back. We're at how clicks originated, right? Everything started with a punch card. And this is how you used to program. And you would click code into these punch cards. And then things got a little bit more advanced with the first computers. And you would click these keys to write stuff. And then the invention of the mouse. And you started to click on the screen for what you needed. And UIs started to evolve, always based on clicks. You would have to click on something that would open something. You would click on something else that would open something else. And UIs started like this, and taps are clicks too. And the whole point is that internet was made for clicks, right? It started off with very simple websites like this one from Google, or this used to be the original Netflix. I don't know if you were around, but the first Netflix website was like this, right? You would click to get a DVD to your house. And then the internet kind of got a little bit out of control with all these toolbars and buttons, but all of this was still based on clicks, right? And now today we have websites like this one here where everything is beautiful and clean. But if you think about it, whenever you want to use a website like this, you're still clicking. You're still clicking on the search destinations. You're still clicking on check-in and check-out dates, so you have to click on the date. So there's actually quite a lot of complex interactions that happen through clicks on websites. And I wanted to kind of go through some of them so that you have an idea of what and why these clicks could become a problem for AI agents, right? So let's look at them in order in just a second. And another thing is that like buttons, like date pickers, and even the internet scoring mechanism, like Google's Page Speed Insights, is all about how fast content loads and how accessible it is for humans, but not really how accessible it is for other types of users, right? And now AI agents, as I said at the beginning, are starting to use the web too. So let's start to look at, what are some things that if you're building a product, if you're building a service, you need to start thinking about if you want agents to use your product effectively. And this is an example of using this is an AI agent scanning a website and browsing a website and clicking into menus, clicking into products, and basically creating a shopping list and buying groceries by itself, autonomously, right? But you can see that it's struggling to navigate because it has to take a picture or analyze the HTML code and see, okay, there's a drop-down, I have to click it to get the drop-down down, okay, and then I have to click that drop-down button. And you see there's all these UI components that the agent has to figure out on the fly. And some of them are more complex than others, right? There's a lot of challenges that agents are facing today, and I want to walk you through 3 broad types of challenges. The first one is difficult UIs. So, for example, we looked at a website like Airbnb. If you look at this Expedia page, this for us seems very simple, right? We can just click where to, we can choose our dates, click search, and it's easy. But for an agent, they have to click this random date picker that has multiple different configurations. Like, okay, I have issues with it as well. Like, you click on the start date, then you click on the end date, then you change your mind, and you click on a different date, and it resets, but then you don't know how to get back to the original start, and you have to reload the page and do it again. Date pickers are very complex for agents to use because the UI that they expose kind of requires a lot of assumptions on how the UI will work. And that's just if you're lucky. Like if you see down below, there's different buttons that add more or less days. On the right, you have to click every single time you want to change the year, the month, or the day. It's a lot of different UI primitives that are made for humans, and even for humans, they're really bad. Then another one is custom drop-downs and custom selects. Like if you want to choose the type of guest, you have to click on guests, and then you have to click a plus or minus button to add adults or children. Or you're browsing a website and suddenly something pops up. An agent that's trying to browse a website suddenly gets this pop-up that hides all of the content and may not immediately know how to close that pop-up and actually continue, right? We've become used to them, but agents kind of take pop-ups as part of the content. Also carousels. If you hide your content behind carousels, right, some of that content will not be immediately accessible. And so agents will need to know, oh, I have to click the little arrow button to access more content. Content that doesn't get loaded immediately, like load more content and asynchronous loading. And even worse is when you're using a mouse and you have to right-click to get more commands and more functionality. So this is the alt-right dialog, and an agent doesn't even know that it should be using the right mouse button, right? So that's one category, which is just challenging UIs. The second category is content that is not visible for agents. So for example, here, you ask an agent to give you an opinion on a piece, and the UI primitives don't allow the agent to actually access it, right? Like in this example, or you have to log in, or if you're in Europe, you have to accept the cookies. These are all friction points that will make agents not successfully browse a website. And then a lot of content is made for humans to give more of an impression of, what they feel like. But agents don't care about emotion. Agents care about factual information. So a website like this is very hard for an agent to browse because they don't really know what they should be clicking on, right? There's three pictures of 3 people with shoes on. Where should they click to actually navigate and continue shopping for you? So it also starts to change, like, okay, how do we change the way that we expose information to agents that don't care about being impressed, don't care about feeling cool? They actually want to find the best option for their owner. Collapsing content in sidebars is another big issue where you have to toggle back a menu to access its functionality. And then the third category of challenging content is ads and deceptive content. This is probably the most dangerous for agents because they are inherently trustworthy and trusting, right? They trust the information that they see. So, for example, in this web page, all of what's highlighted in red are ads. The content is a tiny part of the whole web page. So if an agent visits this web page, what they get from it is basically all spam. Even worse and even more hidden is there's some bad practices that certain websites do. For example, when you go to buy a plane ticket, the airline will automatically opt you in for a paid seat, and the agent has to know that it has to opt out of it. Or, in the case of Ryanair, for example, you have to scroll a very long drop down to choose do not insure me, otherwise you get travel insurance built in, right? And which obviously increases your price of the ticket. So these are all human negative UI bad practices that agents are going to have even more difficulty detecting and navigating around. So if agents will be the main navigators, right, if over time we will delegate more and more of our work, of our browsing, our information gathering to agents, how will the internet change? And this is where we start to go from user experience and have to start caring less about user experience or just as much more of agent experience. What is the agent experience of an AI agent that browses your service, your product, your SaaS, your shopping experience. And there's fundamental differences between humans and agents. The first one is that humans don't like having too much information at once. We are simple brains. We only want a little bit at a time, right? So one big UI best practice for humans is to hide elements as much as possible, like the Nike webpage that we saw earlier, right? Just images, maybe a few buttons, everything else is hidden behind the scene. Agents, on the other hand, they can absorb a vast amount of information right away and instantly act on it, right? Parse it very quickly. So something like Craigslist, the website on the right, is perfect for them because every single thing that they could do is immediately exposed and made available on the homepage. Then humans like things that look cool, like buttons that have cool animations or buttons that hover and have an effect. Agents don't care about that. They just care about accessibility. So something like a hyperlink is much more effective to an agent than a fancy custom HTML button. And the last thing is humans prefer to be influenced subconsciously, whereas agents care about rational information. And this has quite a few implications. So for example, we'll look at one in just a second. So in the last 10, 20 years, we've talked a lot about search engine optimization, right? How do we make our website, our product, at the top of the list of Google? Now we're going to have to start thinking, how can my website be the preferred destination for an agent that gets sent by someone, right? Because an agent can basically have infinite choice of navigating the web to complete a task on behalf of a human. And it's up to the agent to make that decision unless the human explicitly says, go to this website. But as we delegate more and more of our functionality, of our power to agents, they're going to make that decision. So they're going to prefer websites that have better agent optimization. So things like agent task completion speed, how quickly can an agent get stuff done on your website, on your product, is going to be a lot more important than fancy graphics and fancy buttons, right? And so I also think that Google Page Speed Insights is going to start tracking these types of metrics and start adding them. And this whole new agent experience optimization is going to become more and more of a new industry. Advertisements. Advertisements used to be, back in the 50s or 40s, very rational and very explanatory. The advertisement on the right that you see is explains exactly why you should hire a Hertz car. Because, they have great reliability, the service is excellent, and it goes on and writes entire paragraphs on why you should get a Hertz car or rent a car from Hertz. Modern advertisements have nothing of that. Modern advertisements are usually pictures of people doing something and making you feel cool, and therefore you want to buy that product, right? An agent won't care about that type of advertisement. So the whole advertising landscape will also need to change for agents to make rational decisions and rational purchasing decisions and rational navigation decisions of where to go to get stuff done based on facts and good reasoning to make sure that they do the best of, they complete their task to the best of their abilities. So we're going to see agent-first advertisements be much more rational and much less lifestyle-y. And another hot take, or probably the only hot take so far, is agents will actually do more for accessibility than anything else to date, because we're going to have to apply, in order for agents to successfully navigate these websites, we're going to have to make sure that they, the pages are quickly to load, they can get stuff done quickly, which are very much similar types of attributes that accessibility needs for screen readers, for the visually impaired. And so AI agents will actually do a lot for human accessibility as well. And if advertisements start to become more rational, then that will also help us, because advertisements are kind of like the Yeah, a lot of spam these days. And this tweet that I found, I think, summarizes it perfectly, which is websites that have not changed their UI for 15 years are the most agent-friendly. And I totally agree with that. For example, Craigslist is a perfect agent-friendly website. Another thing that's interesting about agents that will influence how things are built and how things will behave is that they are inherently dynamic. They can adapt instantly to a lot of different changes. Whereas humans, we are very, very slow to adapt. You know, as soon as something changes on a UI that we've used for a while, we start to complain. We're like, oh, this new UI is terrible. Why did anyone change it? But agents, you know, they can adapt instantly. And this is an example of two agents conversing, and they decide that human speech is too slow. So they start creating their own speech. They start communicating in code. They invent their own code on the fly and start communicating with that. That's how quickly agents can dynamically adapt. Not only that, they can obviously process multiple tasks in parallel. And we are going to increasingly delegate our tasks to agents, but these agents will not be doing everything by themselves. They will start to specialize. And different agents will be doing different things, right? And why is this important? What is the implication of all of this? The implication is that obviously agents are getting smarter, and agents today are not the agents that we're going to be interacting with in the near future. A lot of agents, especially in Web3, are just either reply guys or simple wrappers around ChatGPT. Even ELIZA agents, you know, they're like, okay, they can tweet, they can access their character.json, but they're not really, you know, specialized with custom models. They're a very shallow interpretation of what an agent is. But obviously that's changing, and some agents are very interesting. But we also see some industry trends that will accelerate this change. For example, every major AI company is moving towards agent-first experiences. So if we think about Google's Gemini 2. Whatever announcement, the word agent appears like 47 times in their press release. If we think about DeepSeek, you know, coming out with open source models that are competitive with closed source foundation models, more and more people are going to have access to models that they can fine tune and personalize and create their own custom agents based on data that only they have. And the hardware is getting cheaper and cheaper. For example, NVIDIA's Digits is a supercomputer that you can have on your desk and train your own models with. All of these different trends are going to translate into more people creating more custom models, and therefore agents will become more and more differentiated. That's the key aspect. Agents will become differentiated not by the prompt, but by what they can actually do and what they can actually have access to. And so with this differentiation, it's very important for agents to be able to transact efficiently with one another. And so one white paper that I wrote is called Agent TCP/IP, and it's an agent-to-agent transaction protocol specifically focused on intellectual property, because if you think about it, everything that an agent kind of is created with and can output is one form of intellectual property, right? And so as agents specialize, we'll need to rely on each other's skills, and skills are intellectual property too. So like, for example, if there's an expert trading agent and I am a financial planning agent, I may need to license the trading algorithm of the expert trader for a specific part of my financial planning, right? And this autonomous exchange of skills of intellectual property is going to be very, very important if we want agents to become more specialized and more autonomous. So I'll close with 1 second left that agents will be your new users. So it may not happen today, it may not happen overnight, but sooner than we know it, fewer and fewer humans will be interacting with websites, with products, and more agents on their behalf will be doing that. So make sure that the next time you build something, you think about agent experience, you think about agent-first accessibility, and yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Do you want to take some questions? If there's 혹시 질문이나 any questions for? Oh, yep.
First of all, thank you so much for this. It was really fun to see in the UX perspective of the AI agent, and I was wondering, as like those websites develop like more in the AI agent friendly UI UX, do you think that like front end engineers or designers will kind of become extinct in the future? Like, what do you think about? And do you still think that this like emotional eye candy homepage still needs to be exist in the future?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's going to be a mix of both. I think for some types of services and websites, they're going to be more and more agent first, but also agent only, because less and less humans will have a reason to visit them, right? Like, I think it's going to separate between websites that help you carry out tasks, right? That you need to get done, but you don't really care. You just want them done efficiently. Those types of websites will be agent only, right? And they won't need to spend useless time making the UI look cool. Like, agents will need, most people will delegate agents to do stuff for them on those types of websites and services. There's other services that are inherently human only, right? That you wouldn't want to delegate an agent to do things for you. So those are more websites where you want to be able to, for example, on Instagram, post your photo and write the caption yourself, or at least have full control. Or maybe a social network that you want to browse. That's also something that doesn't make sense to tell an agent, hey, can you scroll TikTok for me, right? It's like, you don't get any entertainment from it. So I think the web is going to separate into these two broad categories: is the stuff that will need less and less of what you just mentioned, and stuff that will continue to be human first. And in that case, you know, things will probably continue as normal. But rather than replacing front-end designers or, you know, removing need for SEO, what's going to happen is there's going to be this new industry around. Okay, much like you had SEO consultants, you're going to now have accessibility, like agent-first consultants, for example, that help you optimize your site for agents. And then lastly, what could also happen is there could be a double UI, right? The human layer, and then the agent layer that is more hidden behind the scenes, but that agents know that they have to access that. A bit like the ARIA tags on HTML that screen readers and other accessibility devices use. That could also be another option. How the industry, like how things will change, really depends on how the population and the industry kind of gravitates to. But I don't think any designer jobs are at risk at the moment.
Makes sense. Thank you so much. I also have one simple last question.
Yeah.
So like you explained the utility of the clicks and how it kind of like develops as time goes by. Do you think there's like another way of clicks to be developed in the future, optimized for the AI agents? For example, I thought about voice, but is there any other options that you might think of?
I was going to say voice. I actually worked 7 years at Amazon before Story, and I was working on Amazon Alexa, which was the voice assistant. And so we were talking a long time, even before ChatGPT, before it was so natural to speak with AI agents, that voice was going to be the ultimate conversational, the ultimate UI, right? Is like, rather than having to look for what to click, you can just say it. And now you can just write it to an agent. And in the future, probably thought. You can just think about it. I think that's going to be even more further ahead. But yeah, I think the ultimate UI is going to be thought, right? We see a very early example of this with Apple's VR glasses, that you can like move your eyes and the UI will track you. You don't have to think about where to click. that's a very early glimpse of what thought will also feel like. You just think about what you want to do and it just happens. I think, yeah, so it's going to be like text, voice for certain things, but voice isn't always good for everything because you sometimes want privacy. You don't want to like say stuff out loud. And then thought will be the ultimate that captures everything. Everyone will be silent. You know, everyone's just thinking about stuff, scrolling TikTok silently.
Yeah,
Everything is
just
implanted in your
sleeping.
ears. It's going to be a very quiet world in the future.
Very interesting speech. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
박수 부탁드립니다. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.